Close your eyes and let yourself drift to the heart of a distant kingdom where whispers of legends and mysteries linger in the cool night air. In Eldara, beneath a twilight sky, a once great king lies stricken with a strange ailment, casting shadows across the land and worry upon his people. But tonight, we join Prince Alaric, a young man with a brave heart and an unwavering love for his father, as he embarks on a journey that will take him into the unknown, seeking a cure found only in the tear of a dragon. Let the story unfold softly, like the wings of a gentle dream, carrying you to a world of quiet wonder and magic. In the heart of the kingdom of Eldara, the twilight of the once great King Edric had descended, a darkness spreading not from the heavens, but from his own weakening soul. His kingdom, once vibrant, now lay quiet, its people cast in worry and shadow as they whispered of the king's mysterious illness. Day by day his health dwindled, his gaze slipping further from the world of men and into a place no one could follow. Physicians and sages, known for their wisdom and remedies, came from distant lands, yet each left defeated, confounded by the malady that seized him. The king's only son, Prince Alaric, watched helplessly as the figure of strength he had known all his life was reduced to frailty and suffering. He saw his father's crown, heavy and regal, lying untouched, its golden light dimmed as though in mourning. Eldara needed its king. But more than his kingdom, Alaric needed his father. Rumors soon began to drift like the cold wind, slipping through palace halls and tavern doors alike, tales of an ancient cure that lay in the tear of the last dragon. This creature, if it even still existed, had been spoken of only in the hushed tones of old folk tales. The dragon's tear was said to be potent beyond any earthly cure, imbued with the sorrows and wisdom of ages past. Yet finding such a tear was no simple quest, for it was known that dragons shed their tears rarely, only in the presence of pure-hearted sorrow. One evening, as the moon hung heavy and full in a sky laced with clouds, Prince Alaric stood before his father's chamber, where the fire burned low and shadows danced over the walls. In that silence, he felt the pulse of his father's pain, as though it were his own. Something stirred within him, an unwavering resolve. He would seek the tear of the dragon. No creature, no darkness, no legend was beyond him if it meant saving his father. The next morning he summoned the advisors and lords of Eldara. They cautioned him, their voices wavering, reminding him of the dangers of such a quest, of the legends warning that no mortal could face a dragon and live. But Prince Alaric's spirit was unbending, and his voice was firm as he spoke. Should there be any hope, no matter how thin, I would be a coward not to chase it. My father's life, my kingdom's future, these are worth every danger. The court fell silent, for none could match the strength in his words. And so, with the blessings of his people and the sorrow of a kingdom resting on his shoulders, Alaric prepared for his journey. As he set out from the gates of Eldara, the night settled around him, and the stars seemed to watch his every step with a distant, shimmering gaze. His path lay north, into lands shrouded in shadow, where the mountains rose like the jagged teeth of some slumbering beast. They were the forsaken peaks, a place where no mortal dared linger, where even birds took flight only in darkness, and the air itself was said to grow heavy with secrets. The journey was not one of mere steps and distance. Each mile brought omens, as if the world itself were conspiring to warn him of the peril that awaited. A raven with eyes dark as midnight followed him, its voice echoing in strange, dissonant cries. In the villages he passed wary townsfolk who looked at him with hollow gazes, their words tangled with warnings that dissolved as he passed. Words he could not quite catch, but could feel in the marrow of his bones. One evening, as he travelled deeper into the mountains, he encountered an old woman, cloaked and bent with age, her form almost swallowed by the night. Her gaze met his, and she reached out a gnarled hand, her voice a rasp in the cold. "Turn back, Prince," she murmured, her eyes reflecting the gleam of distant fires. "The path you walk is one of sorrow and reckoning. The dragon will test you, and not all who seek her tear return with what they desire." Prince Alaric held her gaze, feeling the chill of her words seep into him, yet his resolve did not waver. He bowed his head respectfully, answering in a voice steadied by the weight of his purpose. "I am prepared for whatever may come. For my father, I would face the darkness itself." The old woman's lips curled into a knowing smile, her eyes glinting with a wisdom that seemed both ancient and sorrowful. She nodded, as if he had passed some silent test, and then, with the faintest whisper of cloth on stone, she faded into the shadows, leaving him alone under the vast sky, the stars his only witness. And so, under the watchful eyes of constellations long forgotten, Alaric continued, his path leading ever deeper into the heart of mystery and myth. The forsaken peaks loomed ahead, veiled in mist and shadow, and somewhere beyond them lay the dragon, waiting, and with her perhaps the salvation of a king. Days passed as Prince Alaric journeyed deeper into the haunted landscape that lay beyond Eldara's borders. The mountains rose before him, dark and jagged, looming like silent sentinels. The air grew colder, biting with a strange energy, as though the peaks themselves held secrets too terrible to release. The forests surrounding the path were thick and twisted, their trees bending like watchful figures, veiled in a permanent dusk even as the day broke anew. At night, Alaric set camp in the shadows, yet sleep evaded him. Strange whispers drifted through the trees, threading their way into his thoughts like unseen phantoms. Sometimes he heard voices, soft and haunting, calling his name, weaving through the night with a sorrowful melody. He could not see the owners of these voices, yet he felt the weight of their presence, and he began to wonder if they were spirits or echoes of travelers who had come before him. Each night, he strengthened his resolve, knowing he must carry on. One evening, as he prepared to rest, a raven descended upon a nearby tree, its eyes black as polished stone, glinting with a strange intelligence. It cawed, a sound that pierced the silence, and tilted its head toward him, as if in recognition. "Are you another omen?" Alaric murmured, half to himself, as he watched the raven watch him. "Or perhaps a guide?" The raven only blinked, its gaze unwavering, and took flight, soaring further into the forest. Alaric's heart quickened, for he felt drawn to follow, as though some unspoken invitation had been extended. He rose and pursued the bird, moving through the shadows until he reached a clearing where an ancient shrine lay in ruin. Stones, covered in moss, stood as silent witnesses to a forgotten era, their carvings faint but powerful, depicting great beasts, battles, and a single dragon at the heart of it all. He felt a chill run down his spine, and his fingers traced the weathered symbols, sensing the age and sorrow bound to them. He had heard tales of the dragon's last stand, of how she had hidden herself from humanity's greed and cruelty. But here, in this ruin, the tales felt alive, as though the spirits of those times lingered, watching him with silent, mournful eyes. "What is your purpose here, young prince?" a voice spoke, startling Alaric. It was low, ancient, with a cadence that seemed to carry centuries of wisdom and warning. He spun around to see an old woman cloaked in midnight blue robes, her face hidden beneath a hood that cast her in shadow. Only her hands, wrinkled and gnarled like old tree roots, were visible, clasped around a polished staff topped with a shard of crystal. She was not the same old woman he had encountered before, but her presence bore the same gravity, a depth that seemed to echo from the mountains themselves. "I seek the last dragon," Alaric answered, finding his voice steady despite the chill that crept over him. "My father, the king, lies stricken with an ailment no healer can cure. I have come to find the dragon's tear, for it is the only hope he has." The woman was silent for a moment, her face unreadable beneath the hood. "The dragon you seek lies beyond the forsaken peaks, but beware, for her tears are not gifts easily won. She will see into the depths of your soul, and if you are found wanting..." Her voice faded, leaving her warning unspoken but clear. "I have journeyed far already," Alaric replied, his voice firm. "If a test lies before me, then I will face it." The woman inclined her head, almost in approval, and lifted a bony hand, pointing toward the horizon where the peaks rose like ominous shadows. "Then continue, young prince. but know that all who venture to the dragon's lair must confront not only the beast, but also the truth of their own hearts. Some return with what they seek, while others return only with shadows. With those words, she turned and vanished into the mist, leaving Alaric alone once more. He stood for a moment in the eerie silence of the clearing, the weight of her words settling over him like a dark shroud. But his resolve remained, unshaken by warnings or omens. He knew that the only way forward was through. The following day, he reached the base of the Forsaken Peaks. Their heights were shrouded in mist, a thick, swirling fog that seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy, as though alive with secrets that had slumbered for centuries. With each step, the air grew colder, pressing against him with a weight he could not explain. It felt as though the mountain itself were testing his resolve, judging his worth as he climbed. As he ascended, the fog thickened, curling around him until he could scarcely see a few steps ahead. Shapes seemed to form and dissolve in the mist. Faces, shadows, visions of his own past that flickered at the edges of his mind. Memories surfaced, moments of his childhood, times when he had fallen short of his own ideals, flashes of mistakes and regrets he had long since buried. Yet he forced himself forward, for he could feel that the heart of the mountain and his destiny lay somewhere beyond. Finally, as night fell once more, he glimpsed a faint glow in the distance, an unnatural light cutting through the thick fog. His breath quickened as he moved toward it, for he knew that beyond that glow lay the entrance to the dragon's lair, the very heart of legend, where myths blurred into reality, and where his true test would begin. And so, as he stood on the threshold of the cavern, the darkness before him more profound than any he had known, he felt a shiver course through him. But there was no turning back. With a final breath, he stepped forward into the waiting shadows, ready to face whatever fate had in store. The cavern's darkness closed around Prince Alaric, its silence thick, stretching endlessly as he ventured deeper into its depths. His torch cast flickering shadows against walls veined with veins of silver and crystals that gleamed faintly, as though touched by the memories of forgotten fires. The air was dense, each breath heavy and cold, carrying a scent of ancient earth and something sharper, something that felt like memory itself, a place where time and light dared not linger. As he walked, his footsteps sounded like whispers, echoing in eerie waves, until at last he reached a vast open chamber. A strange silvered light emanated from the walls, casting an unearthly glow that revealed the form of a creature lying in the center, still as stone. There, curled in a great circle, lay the dragon. Her scales were unlike anything Alaric had imagined. They shimmered with a spectral glow, as if starlight had been woven into her very being. Her form was ancient, vast, yet graceful, a creature moulded by time itself. Her eyes, half closed but gleaming with quiet awareness, seemed to pierce through the veil of ages, and her breaths were deep and steady, as though she slumbered within the pulse of some eternal rhythm. She did not stir as Alaric approached, but he felt her watching, her consciousness filling the cavern as though it were an extension of her very essence. Then, in a voice that was soft yet powerful, like the roll of distant thunder, she spoke. "Why have you come, mortal prince?" Her words echoed around him, filling his heart with a weight he could not name. "What is it that drives you to seek the tears of a dragon?" Alaric knelt, bowing his head in reverence. "I come not for myself, but for my father, the king. He lies stricken with a sickness beyond any healer's art, and I have been told that only the tear of a dragon can cure him." The dragon regarded him in silence, her gaze piercing and calm, her expression unreadable. Alaric felt as though she was sifting through his words, stripping them of all adornment to reach the bare essence of his plea. After a pause, she spoke again, her voice laced with a sorrow that felt boundless. "Mortals often come seeking what they cannot understand," she murmured. "For a dragon's tear is no ordinary gift. It holds within it the grief of ages, the sorrow of all I have witnessed and endured. Such a thing cannot be given lightly, nor to one whose heart remains clouded." Alaric's brow furrowed. He had heard the legends, of course, yet had never understood the weight they carried. "Then, mighty dragon, what must I do to prove myself worthy?" A hint of sadness softened the dragon's gaze as she rose, unfolding herself with a grace that belied her size. Her scales caught the cavern's light, casting iridescent shadows that danced like wraiths upon the walls. To receive the tear, you must face the truth within yourself, for only a heart laid bare can hold a dragon's sorrow. With the flick of her tail, she conjured a pool of water at the center of the chamber, its surface unnaturally still, shimmering with a light that seemed to come from within. "Look into the water," she commanded, her voice firm yet laced with something gentler, a distant, aching kindness. "See yourself as I see you." Alaric approached the pool, his heart beating faster, for he could feel the weight of the dragon's gaze upon him, a gaze that seemed to pierce through flesh and bone to the very core of his soul. He knelt and peered into the water, expecting to see only his reflection. But the face staring back at him was not what he expected. In the water's depths, he saw his own visage shift and change, showing flashes of his past, moments of pride, times when he had spoken carelessly, times he had judged others unfairly. He saw himself as a boy, stubborn and selfish, as a young man, proud and unyielding, a prince who wore his title with an edge of arrogance, and a son who had at times distanced himself from his father's love. He flinched, for the truths were painful, cutting like blades of ice. His flaws, his fears, his regrets, all bared before him, raw and undeniable. A soft voice broke through his thoughts, and he looked up to see the dragon watching him with an expression both sad and wise. "You see now, young prince," she said, "that to hold a dragon's tear is to carry the weight of truth. Only in acknowledging one's own frailty, one's own shadows, can you hope to bear the burden of another's sorrow." Alaric swallowed, his throat dry, but he met her gaze with newfound understanding. "I see," he said quietly. "I am not perfect. My heart is flawed. But I wish to save my father, even if it means confronting these truths and carrying their weight for all my life." The dragon's eyes softened, and for a moment, Alaric thought he saw a hint of warmth within her ancient gaze. "Acceptance is a strength rarely found, young prince. You have seen your truth, and you have not turned away. That, perhaps, is enough." With a slow, graceful motion, the dragon lowered her head, her gaze never leaving his as a single tear began to form, shimmering at the edge of her great, luminous eye. It fell from her scaled cheek and floated gently toward him, hanging in the air like a droplet of pure moonlight. Alaric reached out and caught it in his palm, feeling the tear's weight. A cool, unearthly light, yet filled with a sorrow that seemed to tremble with life. "Take it, and may it heal that which you seek to mend," the dragon said, her voice a soft murmur. "But remember, young prince, that carrying such a gift comes with a price, for sorrow does not fade, but merely changes its form." And as Alaric held the tear, he understood that it was more than a remedy. It was a part of the dragon's very soul, a piece of her heart that would forever remain with him, as both a blessing and a reminder of the burden of truth. Without another word, he bowed deeply to the dragon and turned, his footsteps echoing in the silent cavern as he left. The path ahead was long, but the tear's cool weight in his hand filled him with a strange, quiet strength. He knew that the journey back to his father had only just begun. The journey back from the Forsaken Peaks felt different to Prince Alaric, as though the path itself had altered with the weight he now bore. The dragon's tear, cool and luminous in a small vial around his neck, pulsed faintly, almost as if it carried a heartbeat of its own. The air around him seemed heavier, pressing down on him with a strange force, a reminder of the solemn promise sealed in the dragon's lair. Each night as he made camp, he felt the tear's presence more acutely, its faint light flickering like a distant star. And as the forests and mountains loomed around him, he sensed something stirring within himself, a shadow rising from the depths of his heart. For it was not only the tear he carried now, but also the truths he had seen in the dragon's pool, the flaws and regrets he had once buried, now woven into his thoughts, his memories reshaped by the journey. One night, as he sat by his fire, he felt a strange pull, an urge to look once more into the tear's light. He held it in his palm, watching as the silvery glow danced across his fingers. But as he gazed deeper, he saw something else. A faint reflection not of his face, but of his past, the memories he thought he'd left behind. The faces of those he had wronged, moments of selfishness, times when he had chosen pride over humility, drifted before him. He saw his father's face, filled with disappointment on the nights when Alaric had dismissed his wisdom, thinking himself wiser, more capable. He saw the eyes of friends he had lost through careless words, moments when his pride had hardened his heart, leaving wounds that had never truly healed. The weight of these truths pressed upon him like a burden he could not cast aside. They were part of him now, shadows etched into the fabric of his being. And as he watched them, something stirred within, a voice soft as a whisper, yet strong as iron. To carry this tear, you must be willing to carry your own sorrows as well. Alaric's heart pounded, his thoughts tangled with the pain of memories. He understood now what the dragon had meant, why she had shown him his own flaws and darkness. To seek healing for another, one had to confront and accept one's own wounds, the choices and mistakes that marked the soul. He was not just a prince on a noble quest. He was a man burdened by his own failings, a man learning to bear the weight of truth. With a heavy breath, he closed his hand around the tear, its cool light filling him with a strange calm. It did not erase his pain, nor did it change his past, but it softened something within him, a quiet acceptance settling in his heart. He could not undo his mistakes, but he could choose to carry them with grace, to let them guide him rather than haunt him. As dawn broke, he rose, feeling a renewed strength, a clarity he had not known before. The journey continued, and with each step the mountains grew smaller, the forests thinning as he neared the borders of his father's kingdom. Yet the tear's presence did not diminish. It glowed softly, a silent companion, filling him with both sorrow and purpose. When he finally saw the distant spires of Eldara rising against the sky, a sense of peace mingled with trepidation. He had completed his quest, yet he knew that his true test was only beginning. He would return not only as the bearer of the tear, but as a man who had faced himself, who had glimpsed the shadows within his own heart. Upon reaching the gates of Eldara, he was met by his father's advisors, their faces drawn with worry and exhaustion. News of his arrival spread quickly, and soon the people gathered, watching him with hope and awe as he walked through the streets. They whispered of his journey, of the tear of legend, and of the sacrifice he had endured. At last, he stood before the doors of his father's chamber. The guards opened them slowly, revealing the dimly lit room where King Edric lay. His form thin and pale, his breaths shallow as though the very life was slipping from him. Alaric approached the bed, feeling the weight of the tear in his hand, its cool light bathing the room in a soft glow. Gently, he tilted the vial, letting a single drop fall from the tear onto his father's lips. The glow spread, casting a soft light over his father's face, illuminating him as though touched by moonlight itself. For a moment, there was only silence, a breathless stillness, as though the very world held its breath. Then slowly, his father's eyes fluttered open, their dullness replaced by a faint spark. He gazed at Alaric, his expression softened with wonder and something else, an understanding that needed no words. Alaric knelt beside him, taking his father's hand, feeling the warmth return to his skin, the strength beginning to flow back into his weakened limbs. In that moment, father and son shared a silent communion, a bond deepened by all that had passed between them, by all the unspoken words, the regrets, the silent forgiveness that flowed between them like a river. And as Alaric held his father's hand, he felt not only the joy of his success, but also the quiet acceptance of his own journey. He had sought the tear to heal his father, yet it was he who had been transformed, his heart marked forever by the sorrows and truths he had embraced. Thus, as dawn broke over Eldara, casting light over its people, its king and its prince, the tear's glow faded, its purpose fulfilled, yet its memory remained, a silent vow etched into Alaric's soul. He would lead with wisdom, with humility, and with the strength of a man who had looked into the depths of his own heart and emerged whole. And the kingdom of Eldara, once threatened by darkness, now rose anew, its light brighter than ever, for it was not merely saved by a dragon's tear, but by a prince who had learned the true weight of truth and redemption. As Prince Alaric rose from his father's bedside, the warmth of his father's hand still lingering in his own, he felt a strange calm settle over him. The tear of the dragon had done its work, but its memory remained vivid within him, echoing with an ancient sorrow and wisdom he could neither forget nor ignore. In the days that followed, King Edric regained his strength, his colour returning, his voice no longer a faint whisper, but resonant, carrying the authority that had once defined him. The kingdom of Eldara rejoiced, filling the streets with celebrations. Yet Alaric, though he smiled and joined his people, carried something within him, a silent understanding, a depth that only he knew, marked by his journey to the Forsaken Peaks and the gift he had been given. One evening, as the kingdom rested under a moonlit sky, Alaric found himself walking alone through the palace gardens, where the scent of night-blooming flowers hung thick and heavy in the air. The tear's memory pulsed within him, a reminder of all he had seen and all he had come to understand. For it was not only his father who had been healed, but also the shadows of his own heart, the regrets he had once held as tightly as armor. He made his way to a quiet corner of the garden, where a small, ancient fountain murmured in the darkness, its waters reflecting the stars. Standing beside it, he reached into his tunic and withdrew the empty vial that had once held the dragon's tear. He gazed at it, the glass still carrying a faint shimmer, as though the tear's magic had left an imprint that would never fade. And as he stood there, lost in thought, he felt the presence of his father behind him, the king's footsteps soft on the grass. King Edric approached slowly, his gaze warm yet solemn, as though he too carried the weight of some unspoken understanding. Without words, he stood beside Alaric, his eyes resting on the empty vial in his son's hand. "It is a strange thing to receive such a gift," Alaric said softly, breaking the silence. "The tear saved you, father, but it also changed me in ways I could not have foreseen." King Edric placed a gentle hand on his son's shoulder, his face etched with lines of wisdom and age, yet softened by a newfound peace. "I see it in you, Alaric. You return not only as a prince, but as a man who has faced himself, who carries a burden that few can understand. You have given me back my life, but you have gained something greater, the truth of who you are." Alaric nodded, his gaze fixed on the vial. "I saw myself through the dragon's eyes, father. I saw my flaws, my pride, my mistakes. I have come to understand that this tear was not only a cure, but a gift of vision, a chance to confront the truth of my own heart." King Edric's gaze grew distant, as though he too were glimpsing some distant memory. "The wisdom of dragons is a rare and powerful thing, Alaric. To carry a part of that is both a blessing and a burden. You have been marked by a gift few could endure, and I see in you the strength to carry it forward." They stood in silence, father and son, each contemplating the journey that had brought them to this moment. And as Alaric looked into the depths of the fountain, he saw not only his own reflection, but the faint shimmer of the dragon's tear, its light lingering within him, a quiet reminder of all he had learned. "Will I always carry this weight?" Alaric asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The truths I've seen, will they follow me all my life?" King Edric smiled, a faint, sorrowful smile tinged with pride. "Perhaps, my son, but remember, it is a weight that has also given you wings. You have glimpsed the depths of your own soul, and from it, you have emerged whole. That knowledge, though heavy, is a gift you will share with others as you lead." Alaric felt a calmness settle within him, a strange comfort born of acceptance. He had been tested, faced his own shadows, and through the dragon's tear, he had found redemption, not only for his father, but for himself. And as he looked at his father, he knew that he would carry this weight gladly, for it had become a part of him, a quiet, guiding flame that would illuminate his path. Together, father and son turned and left the garden, the vial still warm in Alaric's hand, though it was now empty. Yet he knew in some mysterious way that its magic had only just begun, for its memory would live on in his heart, a silent reminder of his journey to the Forsaken Peaks, of the dragon's wisdom, and of the tear that had given life and transformation alike. And so, in the quiet shadows of Eldara's gardens, under the eternal gaze of the stars, Prince Alaric found himself at peace, forever changed by the gift he had sought, and by the truths he had embraced. In time, he would become a king, a ruler shaped by the sorrow and wisdom of a dragon's tear. And Eldara would flourish under his reign, a kingdom blessed not only by magic, but by the rare grace of a man who had looked into the depths of his soul and found light in even the darkest places.